Hello everyone, and welcome to the second ever episode of Christian Metal News. On this show, we take a look at the latest releases, tours, merch, and more in the world of Christian metal. And oh man, is there a lot to talk about today, including new releases from Striper and Believe It or Not Becoming the Archetype, as well as a very special interview later in the show. And so without any further ado, let's get into it. Now, right off the bat, one of the biggest pieces of news this month is the return of Becoming the Archetype. And this includes the return of Jason Wisdom as vocalist, which is huge. Literally a day after announcing their return, they put out a single called The Lost Colony and announced their new album, Children of the Great Extinction. And I was never expecting this to happen, so I am certainly surprised and very pleased with their return. In other news, the very legendary Christian metal band Striper has released a new single called Rise to the Call. And Christian death metal titans Broken Flesh have signed to Rottweiler Records. But having said that, there have been a lot of new releases this month, and so here's a bit of a snapshot of that in the metalcore and deathcore realm. There were quite a few other hard rock and metal releases this month, and here are some of those.
Ship on the sea.
Now, in addition to all that new music, there were quite a few tours announced this month, with one of the major ones being the I Won't Survive Tour Part 2 with Convictions and Earth Groans, as well as the Through the Thorns Tour with August Burns Red. Creation Fest 2022 also has a pretty stellar lineup which features such bands as Red, As Lions and Lambs, Convictions, and The Letter Black. And for those of you lucky enough to live near Rhode Island, there is Capulet Fest 2022. It features one of the best lineups I've ever seen with bands like Life in Your Way, Convictions, Glasslands, Spirit Breaker, Relent, I mean the list goes on. But now finally, I recently got the very special opportunity to interview Steve from Confessions of a Traitor, and here's how that went. I am super curious about this. How did you end up getting signed to Facedown Records, and what was that process like?
So if we go back to 2019, when we released our first album, Guided, our management at the time were label shopping us, and we were signed to an Eastern European label called Citrate Records, and they did well for us. We did an EP with them, and we were in talks with doing our album Guided with them, and we get an email from Jason, A&R head at Facedown Records, saying, "Lads, I really like the record. Your management has sent it to me. I just kind of want to understand a bit more about the band, who you guys are and what the situation is." And what had happened is we'd been sitting on the material for about a year, and because it was our first album and we're a young band, we didn't really know what to do with it. And we were like, oh my God, like, his labels reached out to us. And then we were like, in our kind of, I say, juvenile frustration, wanted to get the music out, because we released an EP in 2017 and it's 2019, like there's not been any new material out for a while. So we talked back and forth with Facedown, and I think our release schedule didn't match up with anything that was going on with them. So we were like, okay, we're just going to get this music out there. And we released it in, I was going to say, October 2019. And then we had all these tours and festivals booked in Europe. And then obviously the pandemic hit and absolutely locked us away. So a lot of it, some of the lyrics are reflections of how I felt during that period of time. A lot of the guys developed quite anxious personas about them, and they just channeled it all into music. And I remember we sat down and we went, how many songs have we got? And we got 36 songs. We were like, oh, okay. Wow. So from start to finish, guitars, drums, bass, lyrics, all done. And then we were like, well, we've got a lot of material here. Well, why don't we try and pick out our favorites and refine it? And then we went into the studio to record the vocals for Peacekeeper and Punishing. And our management then got back in contact with Facedown, and Facedown went, these songs are incredible, and signed us there and then, just off the back of those two songs. And then it was like, okay, here's the rest of the material. And yeah, it's kind of evolved from there. So it's been a very quick process, because we only finished recording the final vocals in January this year.
So I've heard an interesting story that was reported, I think pretty recently, that you played in the middle of a restaurant around 2019. How did that end up happening?
Okay, yeah. So this went viral, the video that you're talking about. It's got something like 2.5 million views. The long and short, we were on tour in Eastern Europe, and we had played the Hard Rock Cafe in Bucharest in Romania the night before. And the fact that we'd played there, like Eric Clapton's played there, and there's just a bunch of sweaty goths turning up in all black, playing hardcore music. And the next day that night we were like, we've got a really long drive, so we're gonna start that night. And I remember we set off probably about 11:30 at night after the show and drove roughly about 7 hours, and it was snowing, it was hailing, you could barely see anything. We had chains on the tires of the van. And then we pulled up at this restaurant in the city that we were playing in that night, and we were like, we all just want to grab a coffee and eat something. And as we're sat down having a coffee, the promoter from the night before walks in, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And we're like, oh, we're just getting some breakfast. And he's like, this is my restaurant. Do you want to play a show? And we're like, now? And he's like, yeah, let's play a show. So we had all the gear in the back of the van, rolled it into the restaurant, plugged it in, and it was about 8:30 in the morning. So everyone's commuting on the way to work, stopping in. And we're there just playing a hardcore show at 8:30 in the morning whilst Crazy Town are watching us. And yeah, that's I think the third 30 or 40-second clip of me screaming and then eating food off the singer of Crazy Town's plate and then climbing all over the upholstery did a bit of a number.
On that note, have there been any other like unique venues you've played at? Any other unique show experiences?
Yeah, quite a few actually. I think being a very DIY band where we're just so used to like plugging in, you know what hardcore bands are like, you just plug in and play. We played a riverboat in Lyon in France. And I think there was about 200 kids on the boat, and I remember everyone was playing and I was jumping and I watched the portholes, and before everyone was on it, it was above water. As we were playing, I could just see the water rising above it. I thought, I think we're gonna die. I think we're all gonna drown in here.
Somewhat recently, you guys released a song called Punishing Myself Before God Does, and I'm very curious what that title means and what that song is about.
Cool. So if, like I said, we'll bring it into context of the entire album. So the whole album is called Punishing Myself Before God Does, which is out on the 16th of September. And it's all about what happened to us personally through the pandemic. So there's a lot of political statements. There's a lot of like, the world burns in music, and it's all very, very cliche. And we try and keep the messages as personal as possible with Confessions, and the whole album is like a reflection on different stages of how we were through the pandemic, and the things we felt, and the friends we made and lost, and the people that we lost along the way, because unfortunately it took its toll on all of us. Now the whole album has a run through of various different stages, but I think Punishing Myself Before God Does, the actual song itself, is all about being accountable for the mistakes that you make, and knowing that yes, you can be forgiven and God will forgive you. But if you are unaware or you take that for granted, you're going to continue to make the same mistakes. And I don't think it's good if people just go, I don't know, it's fine, I can be forgiven for that. Whereas I think you should take some accountability for the actions that you've taken and the mistakes that you've made, and then grow from it. So that's where the line, God will forgive me, but I won't. So it's very much like, I understand I can be forgiven for this, but if I forgive myself, then that means I've not learned.
What unreleased song from the upcoming album are you most excited to see the reaction to?
But we're releasing a song on Friday the 24th, so 6 days time, called Forever Hollow. And it features one of my favorite vocalists of all time, a guy called Brian Willey from Currents. And two, it's a very, I think collectively as a band, it's probably our favorite song. It's, I say, a little bit lighter. It's a very heavy song still, but it's got more mellow moments in it. Video is really cool. We shot that a couple of months ago, and I think we're bringing back some kind of like 2006 to 2009 kind of metalcore vibes in it, because we wanted to do a little bit of a kind of a nod to bands that we've kind of grown up listening to. But I definitely say that from my perspective, lyrically and musically, it's my favorite song, hands down. And we've got, obviously the album doesn't come out till September, so that's 3 months time. If you could probably do the maths a little bit in your head, we're probably going to have a couple more singles come out. There's a lot of emotion on the album, and there's one song particularly called To Care for Those Who Cared for Us, which is written about, well, four of the members of the band, members of our family died during the pandemic because of dementia. And it just so happened that it all happened at the same time. And that song's a proper nod to, well, I say a nod, it's more of a kind of a eulogy to those family members. And I think it's those two songs lyrically, what was sonically are very different, but lyrically are very, very emotive.
Where can people find you / listen to your music?
All of the normal platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora. We've literally, as of yesterday, released our pre-orders for the album Punishing Myself Before God Does. So we've got a load of cool merch up on the Facedown website. And we're stoked on the designs. The vinyls are out as well, so they'll all be released on the 16th of September. There's loads of material. Well, there'll be loads more material coming out on Facedown's YouTube channel, and we've got obviously quite a few videos of older music on ours. But I think you and I have been talking on Instagram. That's a really good way to reach out to us. Like, we're really kind of active online. And we quite regularly do Instagram lives where we talk to each other, and we talk to people who we call our family. I've never really liked calling people our fans, so it's more like I like to consider people who are on a bit of a journey with us as more of a family than anything else. So yeah, we kind of chat to them, chat to each other, and talk about what's going on and how everyone's been doing. So yeah, that's probably the best place to listen to us and speak to us.
Huge thanks to Steven for being willing to sit down with me and do this interview. I was very honored to have him as a guest. The full interview I did with him was over 40 minutes, and so I think I may edit that and post it separately on this channel sometime in the near future. Definitely go and support Confessions of a Traitor. I have their music and all the other bands mentioned in this segment linked down in the description below. Anyway though guys, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'd love to hear what you thought of this video, what I can improve, what I should change about this. Thanks so much for watching, and see you guys later. Welcome to the